It's starting. All right.
All right, we are live.
Hey, welcome everyone to our, oh wait, there we go. Now we are live, I think.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag in the beginning. Welcome everyone to our fourth live show. We had a little bit of a week break as we were traveling to France, but we are back and hopefully going to be doing lots more, weekly live shows. So thank you guys for all tuning in to the live chat room here. Gwen is in the chat room.
Yeah, so I will be here. If you have any question, you can write your comment and I will read the question. Right now we are in France, like we said, so the time might not be really good for the US, but if we have some people from France watching, that's perfect.
And tonight, you guys, we have a special guest on board from Australia who has done all sorts of amazing running adventures, challenges all around the world. Don't want to spoil it too much because that's what the whole show is going to be about. But we have Jan Saunders. I don't know, actually, how about Jan? You're here. Hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And how do you pronounce the last name?
You got it, Saunders. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You've done
all right,
well.
I'm pretty bad at names, so welcome.
I want the French accent one.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on, so thank you so much for taking the time aside to chat with us. Let's see. I don't really know where else to go with the intro. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just to let everyone know, Jan is a ultra runner, adventurer, plant-based athlete, and she also has her B&B in Australia. And if anybody is visiting around Melbourne, I guess, don't hesitate to stop there. The name of the B&B is?
It's the Beat Retreat, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can find the website. So yeah, how are you, Jan?
I'm wonderful. I'm not quite as warm as you guys, though. It's winter here.
Yeah.
It's bringing me back all these memories. This time last year, I was in France. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Training for the Pyrenees.
Really? So this was just last year that you did it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I went over about mid-June last year and trained for 5 weeks and then did the race across the Pyrenees and then spent a few days afterwards doing the French Alps. I had 2 months over there, so, you know.
Wow.
I keep the memory feed on Facebook and like, ooh.
Well,
I miss
so
France.
cool. Yeah, for some reason, when I was looking it up, I kind of thought it was a few years ago, but that's great. It's like pretty fresh. This was just last year.
Fresh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so explain us, I guess we can start with your adventure in the Pyrenees. What was it? Was it a race? Was it something? And how did you get into that? Tell us like.
Well, the first question that I'm really interested in is how you got into running and when that all started. And just for everyone watching, Gwen and I are just super intrigued by Jan because, she's just getting out there and doing this, and I don't know when you started running, but basically when we found you, we were like, holy crap, there's someone doing like everything that we want to do, and you're just such an inspiration. We are opening a vegan bed and breakfast. You have one. You do all these adventure runs. Like, we want to do this stuff, so we just are really honored to pick your brain and chat with you and get inspired. So thank you so much. And yeah, maybe you could let us know how you got into running and where was it, how old were you, all of that.
Yeah. Oh, wow, like, where do you start? But yeah, and thank you. Like, that's so kind of you to say because, like, honestly, and I'm not being humble here, like, I'm just like ordinary. I really am just an ordinary middle-aged woman, basically, that just likes to run a bit and have a few adventures. But let me go back a little bit. So I actually turned 55 in 3 weeks' time. So when I did Trans-Pyrenea last year, which, probably was, I would say that it's the hardest race that I've done so far, up there with a couple of multi-day adventure races. But I really didn't start running, like I would say, like anything over 10Ks wow, until I was about 45. So quite a late bloomer, actually. Midlife crisis. Yeah. So, I was your typical person that, was quite active because I was actually a horse trainer in the mounted police. I've been a cop for 33 years before I left, and after I went vegan. Sort of, we'll cover that a little bit later. But, and opened the vegan B&B. But, so I was always quite active and did, I was in the 80s, I did aerobics, like Jane Fonda style, perms and leg warmers and that sort of thing. So, and I did a bit of bodybuilding in my 20s and a little bit of running, but, I didn't like it. I actually didn't like it. You know how, when you start running and you always try to run too fast when you start, and so you're puffed and it's horrible, you don't like it.
I hated it. Exactly.
Yeah, that means
exactly.
It killed me, because you have no idea. You don't realise that you can actually start really slow and it's okay to walk, sometimes. But I went into the police force at 20 and we had to run. It was part of the thing then, we had to run, but it was mainly track running. So, yeah, I didn't like it at all. It was just something we had to do, and it was a chore. But then, I'd get a little bit fit. I'd run a bit and then stop, run a bit and then stop. But yeah, once I hit 45, I think I'm just trying to think, something seized me. Actually, a bit before 45, I did a 100-kilometre charity thing. Do you have Oxfam Trail Walker in France or America?
No.
It's it's in China and it's in Hong Kong, and a few places in Australia. But it's a team, 4-person, 48-hour, 100K thing where you have to raise all this money. So that was the first thing I did. I think it was maybe 2006. But it was, more jog walk type thing, which ironically is sort of what I do now. But that gave me my first taste of it. But, horribly, horribly underprepared and aching and so many problems. And I didn't really do much until I was 45, and I discovered adventure racing and started to do running and mountain biking and paddling and navigation to do adventure racing. So it was sort of a midlife crisis thing. I was sort of single. I was looking for something to do. I'd just gone to Kilimanjaro and climbed Kili with some friends and wanted something to come back and get involved in. Because, if you do a big event, and I'm sure you guys are the same, and some of the listeners, when you do a big event and you've built up to this big event, afterwards it's that post-event blues, you just crash.
Yeah.
Like all of your getting up and training each day is over. And if you don't go and find something big and gnarly and, to hang your hat on, you can be a bit lost. So, yes, it was adventure racing for me. So I got into the running part. So I started adventure racing in, I think it was about 2008. And really into that for about 2 or 3 years. And then I injured my back at work. And basically I couldn't walk down to the end of my driveway. And it was 18 months. It was a very difficult time. You know how it is. I think anyone that runs understands that, when you get an injury and you can't run, what it does to your head.
Yeah.
And with a back injury, I sort of thought it was all over, and my mountaineering and hiking and work, and, I have a farm here and a lot of physical work to do. So I said, oh, God, it's all over, So I actually went vegan in that time. So that was a really good, positive thing. But when I came back, when I was able to start coming back, I was allowed to walk as much as I could or wanted to. So as I started to improve, as my back injury started to improve, I was walking up to 80, 100 kilometres a week. My physio called me the most motivated client that she had, but I was really get back and did Pilates and stuff. And so it all came back. And that's how I got into ultra running, because I could walk, run. So I chose ultra distance trail on mountain because I couldn't paddle still, because I couldn't sit. And same with cycling. So I couldn't sit. And but the walk run thing I could do. So that's how that was born. And then, I loved it. It was great because, what a great way to see places around the world. So my first ultra was the Coastal Challenge in Costa Rica.
That's actually, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What was your first one?
Yeah, so you know, my back injury was September 2011. I had some up and downs coming back. You know, you'd do too much and fall back again, and all of that. And sort of about March 2013, I decided to just take off backpacking around the world for nearly 12 months with no plan. Just put friends in my house here and custodian of all my fur family, all the animals, and yeah, I just took off and just wanted to think about my future, because I was really immersed in veganism then, and my career in the police force with police horses. It wasn't sitting so well with me anymore, because I looked at how we use animals in a different way. And also I wanted more time to strengthen my back, rather than going back into this physical realm of training horses and potentially wreck my back again, because I tasted it and I didn't want to ruin it forever. So I started running around the world, and that's how I did my sightseeing. I was just, you know, I'd just venture off. I'd put my hydration pack on, make sure I have water and a bit of food, and I'd just go running all day, running and hiking. So Costa Rica was there. Costa Rica, do you know the Coastal Challenge? Have you heard of that race?
I looked it up, but no, I hadn't heard of it before that.
Yeah, it's gone, I don't know, I'm sort of guessing, but I think it's about 6 or 7 years now. It's a 250K race, staged ultra, and it's just stunning. Like, it's amazing. I was actually, when I first saw it, I was in sort of the depths of despair with my back injury, and I was just like, you know, YouTubing as you do, and something came up and on YouTube of this race, and it was really evocative. They had this really haunting music, and you know Costa Rica, it's these magnificent mountains and jungle and rainforest and like big open beaches and palms, and I looked at it, and like the hair literally stood up on the back of my neck, and I couldn't even walk to the end of my driveway, but I was like, I'm going to do that race. You know, I'm going to do that race. I had people telling me that I had to accept my injury, and that I would be much more at peace with myself if I just accepted that I couldn't run again. And I was like, you know, can I swear on this?
Yeah, yes, you can.
So like, yeah, fuck you. So yeah, that's what it was. And
that's a devastating mindset, you know. So it's cool that you didn't accept that. You know, you were accepting that way of life, and you wanted to keep your eye on the gold, right?
Yeah, you know, one of my favorite movies is Kevin Costner's Field of Dreams. You know, build it and they will come. I don't know if movie, but he builds a baseball like pitch in the middle of a cornfield, and all these like legends of baseball past come, and he sort of had this voice, and I sort of laughed to myself, because I felt that race was the thing for me. Like, just enter and you're going to be okay. As it turned out, I wasn't. The first year, I signed up, but 6 months before it, I knew it was like it wasn't going to happen. So I did put it off for another year, and then I decided to do this traveling and use it as my final thing. So pretty well 3 days after I finished the race, I flew home after a year of being away. So it was a great way to finish. Yeah, victorious. Wow. About coming top 10 female too, which was great. So and
that's your intro to like ultra running, and you were traveling the world preparing for it, and then that was it, and then you came home.
Yeah. So you know, life was quite different. It was a bit of a shock to come home, and that readjustment. Namely, I mean, I've come out of this beautiful, lush jungle of Costa Rica. Everything's green and beautiful, and then I've come back to Australia in February, which in this area it's so dry, everything's washed out, the landscape is bleached, and you know, all of a sudden I had this big house and responsibilities, and everything seemed too much. I'd been living out of a backpack for a year. It was very Freudian. I didn't even make my bed for 1 month. I slept under a sheet with my sarong as my pillow slip. And if it got cold, I pulled my sleeping bag over me. It was clearly I just couldn't let go of the traveling thing, you know. I didn't unpack, and it was very strange. But,
wow. I mean, we understand. Like, adjusting back to normal life is extremely difficult.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys now, I mean, I know that, you know, you've quit your jobs and you're doing this and that. And yeah, I think if you then sort of got to this place and you thought, oh, I've got to go back and get a job or whatever and live this sort of like, no, it's like, don't put me in a box anymore. So,
Yeah.
exactly how I did try to go back to work though, because, you know, I had mortgage to pay, I had commitments. So, and I'd been a cop since I was 20 and basically in the mounted police all that time and privately coaching and training horses. And I didn't know how to do anything else but horses really, or so I thought. So I fell into the B&B, just thought, well, you know, I have this room and, you know, I'll do Airbnb. You know Airbnb, yeah?
Yeah.
And then people, you know, I fed them the breakfast I have, which is like, you know, I love having more on the healthy whole food side of the plant-based thing, and they loved it. And then I'd ask for dinner, and then people started to ask for cooking classes, and then I suddenly had that realization that, you know, maybe this is staring me in the face. This is what I can do. And,
so this was while you still were working for the police when you tried to go back?
Yeah, but, you know, I ended up, like, I was thinking I'd stay in the police force a couple more years and retrain to do something else because, you know, I was, I think it was about, I don't know, 52 then or something like that. And I couldn't see how I was going to survive if I didn't want to do horses anymore. Like, it, you know, that was all my income. So
yeah.
This little Airbnb thing, like, that wasn't going to pay mortgages and stuff. So, but as it turned out, my inner self just took over anyway. I was at work about 3 weeks, and I was doing some activist work with Animal Liberation Victoria because I decided when I was traveling that you know, that's where I didn't want to just be a vegan. You know, I was very, very much emotionally connected to making the world a better place for animals and humans and the environment. And I thought I'm going to do some activist work. So it was about 3 weeks in, I'd been back at work, and I did duck season opening down here in the wetlands of Geelong, which is a couple of hours from where I live. And how we do it is we have to break the law. We have to go out on the water before we're legally allowed to rescue ducks that have been shot and left by hunters. Because sometimes if they're further out, they can't be bothered going to get them. And especially if they know they're a protected bird, because they do shoot protected birds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was a little anxious because, you know, I've been a law-abiding citizen for, like, you know, all of my life.
And you're a cop.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, here I am confessing. But I sort of figured that I'd just done a 250-kilometre ultra in Costa Rica. There was no fat cop that was ever going to catch me running through the water, you know. So
yeah.
I wasn't worried. So I just sort of said, I'm just going to do my own thing, slightly separate from you guys, because I can't get arrested. I can't. So as it turned out, it was all fine. And then the next day we did a march protesting against our government. We had a guy called Tony Abbott in power then, and there was a lot of people unhappy. And I was carrying a banner. It was to do with animals again, with Animal Liberation Victoria. But ironically, ALV decided to stage our march directly at the back of the whole very, very large protest, which is directly in front of my colleagues in the mounted police. So I'm like, carrying my sign, hi, you know, so it's pretty funny. And then the next day, very next day, after this big weekend of animal activism and sort of, you know, not doing very cop-like behaviour, there was nothing illegal about that march, by the way, it was all legal. But I had a 5-day semi-automatic pistol course to do because I'd been out of the job, out of work, like operationally, for a couple of years with my back and then travelling. And I turned up and I got about 3 hours in, and my brain was just like, I just didn't belong there, and I knew I didn't belong there. And it was sort of funny to look back on now, but at the time it was really quite traumatic. I was actually, I basically had this little voice in my head that, you know, you don't relate to these people, this situation. I don't want to carry firearms. I don't want to ride a horse. I don't want to protect industry and individuals that I don't believe in, that I think are harming the planet and animals and people. And so you know what it is when you go vegan, and it's not just about animals. It opens your mind to a whole different way of looking at a whole range of issues, social justice issues, environmental, our health system, and you start to recognise that what you have grown up believing is not necessarily so. And more than that, we're often manipulated to believe something that's really harmful. And unfortunately, as wonderful as policing and necessary as policing is, in my role as on the horses, a lot of ours is crowd control. So, you know, we're defending buildings, we're defending industry, and I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. So I had a little bit of a meltdown there with my semi-automatic pistol in my hands and tears running down my face, because I thought, what the hell am I going to do? I don't want to stay here, but what am I going to do? So, but I had to step out of the line because I was mortified. I was so embarrassed because the instructor was coming back along the line and he was going to see me with tears, and I felt like an idiot. And,
yeah,
so anyway,
you know, it's mixed emotions. You know, like just like what is going on? Why is this happening? But you know it's not right. Wow.
Yeah. So you know, it's sometimes. I mean, as it now a few years down the track, it's the very best thing that could have happened to me. As is my back injury. But at the time when things that seem, I mean, in the greater scheme of things, I mean, I've got, you know, have friends that have cancer, have died of cancer, you know, got terrible chronic disease. And in the greater scheme of things, my back injury was nothing. But when you're in it, of course, it's everything, because it's your identity tends to get caught up. You think it's who you are. You know, you forget that your essence is something else. You define yourself by I'm a runner, you know, I'm a police person, things like this. And when that is threatened, you feel quite lost. So I described it as this transitional period. It took about a year for me to start to get a grip on everything. I felt like I was shedding my skin. So, you know, because I was this cop for so long, and I felt a level of shame because I felt like my colleagues had been wonderful right through my back injury, and when I decided I'd go travelling, and I knew they needed me at work because I was one of the main trainers and instructors. But, you know, and then I turned around and said, oh, sorry, guys, I know I'm ready to work, but I'm not here and I'm going. So, yeah, I was very lucky. I had one wonderful sergeant who was upgraded at the time, and he was very, very supportive. And he actually told me that he was proud of me, and I couldn't believe it because it's a very uncop-like thing to say of someone that's like going, I actually want to save animals. So he was like, okay. He was just more terrified I was going to get arrested and the media was going to get hold of it. So, but he's gorgeous. He follows me today on the Beat Retreat page. So, yeah, he might be watching. And if he is, thank you, Matt. I still think about you. You're best.
No, that's really good to hear, this transition period for you, because like you said before, like we're going through it right now. So it's good to hear that, like, it's scary. It's scary quitting your job and, you know, relying on our savings and waiting for the money to start coming in and waiting to open our B&B and just hoping that it's, I mean, we know it's the right thing.
Yeah, we know it's the right thing, but in the same time, when you are in it, like, it's hard to be like, to trust the process. And you kind of have to trust, like, being blind, because you don't know, you know, you are on your way to being yourself, but yet you are not too sure because it's kind of, I don't know.
It takes time.
It does. And you know what you said, Gwen, like trust the process, is something that really, really helped me during that quite difficult year, particularly. It's like 2014 was a tough year for me emotionally. And, you know, and the business was very, very tiny. It was Airbnb at that stage. I was lucky I had so much sick leave up my sleeve from 33 years as a cop. So, you know, I could use that. So I had some income. I had it, you know, quite easy that way. It wasn't that I was destitute. So, but I listened to the Rich Roll podcast. Are you familiar with Rich Roll?
Yeah, we listen
to it. We love Rich Roll. Anyway, I'd listened to Rich Roll since I think about episode 40. So quite early on, right through my traveling, I was listening to Rich. But particularly, it really started to resonate with me when I was going through this sort of tumultuous period, because some of those people that he interviews, they're really, really amazing. And they're paradigm shifters, you know, and they do things out of the box. And even Julie, his wife, who I find a little bit of a hippie tripper, she came out with some quite profound things that actually really resonated, and she helped me in that regard. And I'd be out doing long runs and stuff, and I'd be listening to them, and not just them, but the people that they interviewed. And I thought, yeah, so they really gave me the confidence that, you know, you're defining yourself by this person and you're not that person anymore. So, you know, just trust the process, get on with it. And I'd really say that to you guys. Everyone, I think, yay for you, because you're a lot younger than me, obviously. So it's great that you're taking that chance.
Yeah, like you said, like just the fact of like not being in a box, because you know, I see that like so often when people, you know, like you have a job and then you quit your job because it's not you, and then they ask you like, so what do you do now? But it's hard because there is not a box to say, you know, I'm trying to find myself, I'm trying, you know, like what is that, like what
I am my authentic self.
Yeah, I'm a runner, but I don't make any money. Yeah, not professional. Yeah, but it's just being yourself, and we're also really lucky because we're creative and we find ways to make money and make it work, and it's a blast and it's fun, and we're, you know, challenging ourselves. But it's really nice to hear all this from you.
Yeah, no, it's great. And, you know, and I really think like, you know, with you guys wanting to open a B&B, I mean, I can certainly say I love this. Like it's, when I started, you know, with the Airbnb, you know, it felt good from the start because, you know, I love people and, you know, I love the food. I called it my gentle advocacy from the start, because it's very much an inclusive thing. You know, when you go and do activism, it's there's a lot of stress to, you know, with that, and it's not a easy thing to do, activism in any level, and it's it's very emotional. And but when you're looking after people in the B&B, even to come here, even if they're not vegan, they have to be open-minded and have a certain openness of heart to even want to come here. And I would say that, you know, half of my guests aren't vegan. Quite a lot of them are vegetarian, but more and more aren't either, but they're interested. So my cooking classes that I do, I would say the majority of them aren't vegan, and they're vegetarian. Yeah, so it's great because, and I love it. It's actually my favorite thing because then it really makes what I'm doing here really meaningful, because I'm helping people step towards making some really significant changes in their life that are not going to just benefit them and their families, but have much broader repercussions, as we know, across the board. So it's really positive. We have a lot of fun. The people are gorgeous. We have these great communications, and it's an in-house B&B, so it's very inclusive. If some people come and they just want to do their own thing, but it's probably 10% that just want to have a very private little romantic weekend. Most people want to come up, hang out in the kitchen, do a cooking class, have meals together, you know, maybe a guided hike or run, and they're just, and, you know, if they're not vegan, I don't bring the vegan thing up. I send them an info PDF when they book, so they know that, you know, please don't bring any animal products into the, you know, food. They can wear their leather clothes or whatever. I still got down gear from mountaineering and all that. I haven't got a problem with that if you've already got it, like whatever. Yeah. But food, like, you know, just not cool to bring cheese and stuff. And people get that, they respect that, and I let them ask the questions, and once, you know, they ask the questions, and I just let them lead. And people are really interested because once they know they're not being judged and they don't feel uncomfortable about it, there's a lot of questions they want to know. You know, they want the answers. So it's really cool. It's great. I have so much fun with guests, and I know they do too.
Yeah, so. We have someone in the chat room, Jen, who says Jen's vegan B&B is fabulous. So she said
she's a friend of yours.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, have we got a name?
Yeah.
It's her YouTube.
Jen loves this stuff. And actually, I think Jen comments on a lot of our videos.
Yeah.
So, hey, Jen, thanks for watching and tuning in.
Yay!
Yeah. Wow, this is really great to hear. I mean, we're stoked. Like, one day we will visit your B&B, and hearing all of this, like, we know what it's like, and we definitely want to shout out to ALV too, because we actually did some work with them too when we were in Australia. Hearing your stories is bringing up so many memories for me of when we were in Melbourne.
It's crazy.
And see Evan as well. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe we did meet you. Who knows? There's a lot of people back then. We did some demos too downtown Melbourne.
I think it would be interesting to know more about your transition to being vegan. If you can explain us like what made you try it, what made you interested, what like for what reason at first.
Yeah. Well, it was 2011. Hang on, maybe 2010. We had a program here. We had an expose on a TV program here called Four Corners about live export of cattle to Indonesia. And it was undercover footage by Animals Australia. And that was, I know that was a catalyst for a lot of people around that time. There's sort of been these little stepping stones, and that was one. When people just looked at that, and I think it's very easy. It's like, at the moment what's going on here is there's been an expose of dog meat trade in Bali, and a lot of Australians go to Bali. So it's really hitting home across the board, vegans, non-vegans. It's just captured people's imagination. And I think that's what happened with the live export issue, and that led me to the Animals Australia website. And then once I started to look at the Animal Australia website, obviously I started to find out about, the dairy industry, the egg industry, the broiler industry, broiler being the chicken meat, and how rapidly those, how they've been bred to grow so quickly that they can't hold their body weight and things like that, and the male chicks being ground up and all of this stuff, for the egg industry. And I couldn't believe it. Like when I got to the dairy industry about the male calves being killed, like taken so young and killed, I actually didn't believe it. I just could not believe it. And I was at the time
hidden from all of this. It's really not in the public's eye at all.
No, it's really not. And it's an interesting thing because at the time when I found out all about this, I was actually, my boyfriend at that time was a beef cattle farmer. And so I wasn't, when we first started seeing each other, he actually said to me, he said, "You're not a bloody vegetarian, are you?" And I said, "No."
That's so Australian.
I had been a vegetarian for a few years previously, but it hadn't really been for ethical reasons. It had been for health reasons, because I think I read back in the 80s or 90s that there was a link between red meat and colon issues, like bowel issues. There's a lot of bowel issues in my family. My father had died of sort of related stuff. So I just thought, I'm going to give up meat. Cows are nice anyway. But I didn't have the internet. I didn't know even any vegetarians. So it sort of didn't go much further until I saw this program. But it still took me a year of researching, because a lot of it I thought, that's terrible. But I think that surely that's not true. And I think they're just pumping that up a bit. Yeah. And then I went with my my then boyfriend too, because he was sort of like he was a beef cattle farmer by default, and he still is. It's a family business, and this is why I have some empathy for farmers. And a lot of my activist friends, they just hate on farmers, Yeah. But I know it's not always black and white. There's people are born into these families. They really don't know anything else. For hundreds of years, they've been seen as doing this really important public service, basically, in their work. And now all of a sudden they're being vilified, and it's very difficult. And they inherit a lot of debt. In modern agriculture, there's so much debt, and they're not the best money managers, a lot of them. So it's very difficult for them to extract. It's not so much the case in my ex's situation. His father's very elderly. He can't just abandon him on the farm at this point. So he's sort of caught there for the time being. But we had this conversation with the girl, because I asked her point blank about the dairy calves. And And I was so naive then that, you know, dairy people that connected with farming might get defensive, because my ex wasn't defensive when I asked him questions, but she was. And I got like a half-hour tirade. She was very upset with me for asking the questions about what happens. Is it really true that what happens to those boy calves? Clearly it was true, but she didn't like it because I was still obviously eating some dairy. So, you know, what do you expect?
What did she tell you exactly? That it wasn't true, or that it's not what you think?
Well, the funny thing is, I was so horrified because I hate confrontation that I can't remember. All I just know is that I had this avalanche of anger at me, and I was just trying to say, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. But she never denied it. So, you know, of course I know that it is true. And I do remember her saying that, basically, you know, if people want to have dairy, they have to accept certain realities. And those certain realities are, there is no retirement plan for dairy cows, and there is no happy life for boy calves. There's just not. The industry can't operate without those two things. So I get it, you know. So, but after that I went vegan.
Yeah. And maybe I'm just going to briefly say, for those people that will watch this later that may not know about the dairy industry across the world in industrialized countries, maybe not in developing countries, but in developed countries, what happens is the cows that go to the dairy farm, they're female, of course, they have milk because they've had a baby. Well, what happens to the boy baby is it's not going to produce milk, so it's taken, because it's not seen as a financial asset to the dairy industry. So it's taken by the veal industry and basically housed for a few weeks or months so it cannot move, and then it's slaughtered for its meat really, really young, like really at a very young age. And so that is kind of seen as a byproduct of the dairy industry. So if you drink milk, you are paying for that process of the slaughter of a really baby male cow. And then the female babies go back into the dairy industry. And then as soon as the moms who can no longer produce milk at a profitable rate, they're also slaughtered and their meat is consumed by the beef industry. So it's a vicious cycle. And you know, the lady that you asked, she gave you the right answer though. This is the reality. Like, if we want to consume dairy, and I know what it was like. I was in denial for years. I was a vegetarian and I did not want to hear any of this. And I didn't believe it, but I also didn't want to believe it. And so I understand for all the people who are listening, like, I understand that this is like so scary and you don't want to hear what we're saying, and but the truth is it was so much scarier to think of giving up dairy than it was to actually do it. You probably agree that once we did it, it was like the simplest thing ever. And it wasn't hard. Like, the thought of giving it up was very difficult, but doing it was like simple.
I think every vegan thinks that now. It is quite amazing how I remember when I you know, if you put it on Facebook, it means it's true, you know. Like, I was sitting there poised to say I'm going vegan, and I remember thinking like, oh gosh, you know, this is, put it out there and there's no going back. I'm never going to have butter or goat's cheese again, which is marinated goat's cheese I used to love, and this organic butter. And it seemed like a huge sacrifice, but, you know, it was one I was prepared to take, you know, which is like so crazy. I thought I was being so noble. And, you know, 2 months later, it was not an issue, you know, it's just so not an issue. But I know when I was traveling, I slipped a couple of times. I'd always loved croissant. So I love croissant. Yeah. And when I was in France, I thought, oh, damn, I finally go to France. I can't have a croissant. And it kept like niggling away at me. And I just thought, oh, just have one. You know, just have one. Go on, have one. So I had one. I was like, so it was sort of good. And I say to newer vegans now, if something's really nagging at you, like, not if it's just a little one moment thing, but if something's really niggling at you and you want to try something again, do it, because I reckon that 99% of the time your taste buds have changed and it's just not what you think it's going to be anymore. You've changed. Yeah. And plus, like, I see calves, like, there was a Facebook thing recently about a little spoof on that, forgotten what movie it was, but he's like, you know, the I see dead people thing, is
Yeah.
and this man, this little boy saying, I see dead animals. And I was thinking, like, yeah, I used to think that if I went and wanted an ice cream or something, I'd see dead calves. So
Yeah.
it's easy when it's an ethical thing, other than a diet thing. Once it's an ethical thing, yeah, it's really, the temptation is not there. But yeah, so that's how I went vegan, and you know, it did feel like a weight had come off my shoulder. But what I didn't expect was how well I'd feel. I had some reservations to start with, that, you know, because I was obviously you know, I was injured at that time, but I knew I wanted to come back and do sports, and my health was important to me. I wondered if, and I literally thought, well, you know, even if I'm not quite as healthy, that's okay. You know, I want to do this. But then I read Scott Jurick's book, Eat and Run, you know, Scott Jurek, the ultra runner. And then Rich Roll's book came out about a month later, and I read Rich's book, and I was just like, oh yeah, I've got nothing to worry about. These are leaks, you know, little old me is going to be absolutely fine. So then I could just, you know, jog happily off into the sunset, knowing that my health, especially, you know, not much junk food here. I really think that if you're type of vegan, you're going to end up just as unhealthy as people eating junk food, omnivore type diet. So that worries me a little bit, because people will turn around and blame going vegan for becoming unhealthy, and it's really what they're eating within that vegan diet. I mean, like, we know you can eat Coke and chips, and of course you're going to get sick. So, if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you are going to thrive. So everyone's going to have slightly different needs within that, but yeah, big diet.
So what kind of resources did you use at that time to figure that out, to figure how a plant-based diet can be healthy, how you can get everything, how you can be an athlete?
And like recipes, like, or did you just kind of have a knowledge, like, okay, if I eat rice and beans and, you know, vegetables, I'm going to be okay?
I mean, I certainly, when I first started, the interesting thing was, I mean, now obviously, you know, I'm a cooking teacher, and, you know, I rave on about my classes and my meals and stuff, and my family thinks it's hysterical, because before I was vegan, I was a very, very ordinary cook. Like, I ate to fuel myself, and I like healthy, reasonably healthy food, but what I thought was healthy food, but I certainly wasn't at all confident in cooking for more than, like, you know, maybe 4 people, and getting experimental or anything like that. So, and of course now I'm just like so fully immersed in cooking. I love it. But fueling myself, like, as far as, you know, general health as well as our sporting life, it was just that, yeah, just on the internet and reading. I mean, Scott Jurek and Rich Roll just sort of, they would mention various things. You know, I sort of went down the track of the whole food plant-based type thing to a degree, but I wasn't totally down with no oil. And of course, at that time, 5 years ago, coconut oil was like the miracle food.
Yeah.
I had reservations about that, because it just made common sense to me that it was still an oil, but, you know, it was a better type of oil. So, so, you know, I started out, like, when I went traveling, people said, oh, how did you go traveling? You know, like, how do you eat well when you travel? For me, I can eat really, really simply. I can just, you know, I say I find myself in Montenegro, where the vegan thing is just like, yeah, whatever. And I can't speak a word, and I can't read it. Like, if I go to France or Spain or something like that, I can sort of make out what things are. Yeah. There's so many similarities to English, but you go to Montenegro and no idea what it says on a label. I did find out that, I can't remember what it's now, Posno, I think it was. It's something to do with the Greek Orthodox thing. So I think that was sort of like vegan. So I could look for that or ask for things like that. But every like in Morocco, I spent 2 months just driving around in Morocco, quite remote areas in Morocco, and they've all got these little souks in mountains, you know, so they have them just about every day of the week in some village or another, and you can go and get some fruit and vegetables, grains, bread. I did eat a lot of bread in Morocco, I must say, but it just wasn't a problem because I could eat really basically. I mean, when I went to New York, I knocked myself out because all those organic, vegan restaurants. It was so exciting after, just feeding myself simply. But, I was running.
Yeah, we did the same thing, though. I think that's like a really key component of the barrier, or what keeps people from maybe traveling and understanding, is they think that it is pretty complicated and that you need to buy the fake meats and the fake cheese and all this stuff. But especially when you travel, you really don't have to do any of that. When we travel, and even now, we're doing what you did. We eat a lot. We're eating bread. We're eating fruit and vegetables. We can get some cereal that's vegan, oatmeal, like done. We don't need anything else.
Yeah, we don't need anything that is like specifically made for vegans. No. We just eat what everyone eats. It is vegan. Nobody knows about that, but it's just regular food.
Yeah. So, what was that?
Accidentally vegan, we call it here, certain things, but of course, fruit and vegetables, grains, legumes, you can just get them anywhere in the world. And that is the basis of what we should be eating. And it's cheap. It's available everywhere. I mean, obviously, if I was staying somewhere I didn't have any cooking facilities, I wouldn't do the grain thing. But like Costa Rica, I was pretty well raw. I just had, trying to think what cooked thing. I think I had some rice and beans. Obviously, Costa Rica, they live on rice and beans. So I had rice and beans in Costa Rica, but it was other than that, it was like probably 90% raw, and I just thrived on it. It was great.
Yeah, with all of that fresh, fruit, it's amazing. So I know that it's 10:50 here. You probably need to check out. You have a meeting in a little bit, so maybe we have about 10, 15 more minutes. I want to now talk. I want to talk because I'm super interested, and I'm sure everyone is, especially with running, on the event you did last summer in the Pyrenees. So how did you find out about that? What is it for everyone that doesn't know? And then walk us through what it was like and what you ate and all of that.
Yeah, because I just wanted to add that that's how we found you, through an article that was in Trail Runner magazine or something like that.
Yeah. Before the race. Yeah, of course. I can remember that. Yeah.
Because like we mentioned, we're very interested because we're going to be doing our first adventure run next summer. So walk us through all that.
Super excited. All right. So Transpyrenea, I first found out about it a couple of years before the race because it was the first one. So the race I did was the very first time it had been held. So an ultra running friend of mine in Victoria, who I trained with, she told me about it. And at the time, it was going to be only for 3 people, and you obviously had to have something behind you to qualify. You didn't need points, but you needed to demonstrate that you wouldn't be lasting a day out there. So I mean, with my adventure racing background, sort of. I had done one for a couple of years, but expedition style adventure racing. So that's multi-day adventure racing. And when you do it multi-day adventure racing, you sort of sleep an hour and a half a night, and it's just mountain bike, on foot, paddling the whole time. So it's pretty gnarly. And obviously I've done mountaineering as well with my ex. And, some decent ultras, sort of Costa Rica and a few other things in Australia. And anyway, but I'd never done 100-miler, so it seemed like crazy for me to think that I could do something across the Pyrenees for 866 kilometres. But because of the Costa Rica thing, when I couldn't walk to the end of the driveway, and because of when I did multi-day adventure racing, every time I signed up for something, it seemed totally impossible. But I did it anyway, and it always sort of worked out, So I just thought, oh, well, you can at least try. So that's what I did. I signed up, and 6 of us from Australia ended up signing up. But and I was really the least experienced and certainly the least talented of the 6 people. that signed up from Australia. And interestingly, all of them were vegan and one vegetarian.
Really?
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. But one by one over that 2 years, for one reason or another, everybody else dropped off and I was the only one left. So here I was, like, carrying the hopes and dreams of Australia. Yeah, like, I'm really joking here, by the way. Really joking. But, you know, there I was, the only Australian going across, and I was like the short straw, you know. So, but I went and, you know, I trained as hard as I could here. And obviously I'm doing the business as well. So I put a friend here who's also a vegan ultra runner, much more talented than me, may I say. He looked after the place for me while I was gone, which was great. And I headed off over there because, you know, I can't train on mountains here. Our mountains, we don't have mountains here like in France. So I knew if I was going to have any hope at all that I needed to go over there and get training. So I literally just flew into Paris. I didn't even go into Paris. I just got straight on a train and headed down to the Pyrenees and started to train down there. And I just, a day or two ago, I shared a memory from last year. I think it was yesterday. I went out and did a 5-day training thing, and I took my big pack because I was there for 2 months. I had a big pack, and then I had the pack that I was going to use in the race. I was sort of like in the adventure racing mode. So I certainly wasn't taking a little Salomon pack, you know, a little hydration pack. I was self-supported. I was a vegan. I'm not like other people that could get some stuff at checkpoints and villages. I didn't know what would be available. So I was completely 100% self-sufficient. I think I was probably the only one that was. And my pack sort of varied between, I don't know, 8 to 13, up to 13 kilos during that race. So, you know, when you're out on your feet so long and up those mountains, it was pretty heavy sometimes, but I really need to train with that. But that first 5 days I was out, it was brutal and it nearly broke me. And I was in tears at one stage, and I just said, you know, what am I thinking? What am I doing here? I'm not going to make it past stage 1. And I've got a best friend with just been diagnosed with breast cancer. A relative with, you know, just told me that she has early onset Alzheimer's. I've got a mother very sick. I've left my business. I've spent all my money flying over here. But this thing that I've done for a number of years now, I link my endurance races with fundraising for charities. So far I've raised about $14,000 over the last 3 or 4 years since the Coastal Challenge. I started with that one, fundraising for Animal Liberation Victoria. So this one was my big one. So I picked 5 charities, $2,000 target, a $1,000 target for each charity. So it was a $5,000 target, and it was Animal Liberation Victoria, International Anti-Poaching Foundation, who I volunteered for before in Zimbabwe, a horse rescue group called Project Hope, and 2 animal sanctuaries. Actually, can you see that cow in the background photo? Yeah. Can you see those photos? Yeah. So that cow that I'm squatting down next to, I actually ended up saving that cow. He was a cow that lived locally, and he was destined for the dinner plate. He's a Black Angus, and long story short, I was able to save him, and another friend saved one of his paddock mates, and he now lives at a sanctuary about 90 minutes from here with his friend. And so I fundraised for them as well. So, so anyway, and it was sort of that fundraising keeps me going when sometimes you just want to quit. If it was just for you, you'd quit. But you're doing it for a bigger reason. I'm also doing it because I know that it's quite a powerful thing to do especially when you're sort of middle-aged, you're a bit older, you've got a back injury, and you're vegan and you're doing ultra distance things, that it sends a very powerful message to non-vegans who think, well, where do you get your protein and you can't be healthy? And I know, I see in people's eyes when they know what I do, and I'm not fast. I'm just an ordinary woman. I'm not a super athlete. I don't have any natural talent for all of this, but I can just keep plodding along. I'm not fast, but I can just keep going. and I recover very well. So, you know, I did manage to get to that start line. It was a good thing in many ways because I had to readdress, you know, really think seriously about what I had in my pack. So I started the race the day after my 54th birthday, and what ended up happening, there's a couple of things. My back did flare up really badly on day 2, I think, day 2 or day 3. It spasmed, and I thought my race was over because last time my back had played up a year before, I was out for 10 days, and I thought that's it. So it was pretty bad. Like, I was really devastated, and I rang the race director and said it was over. And then 6 hours passed, and I realised it was feeling better. So
wow.
it was 10:30 at night. I was in the Pyrenees. I was at a refuge, Mont Canigou. Do you know? Have you heard of that, Gwen? Mont Canigou.
Where was the start?
Sorry.
Where was the start?
Oh, the start was at about, I don't know, I think it's about 40 or 50 k's in off the coast, and it was at a big fort called Balaguard, I think, Fort Balaguard, I think it was called from memory. I'm terrible with names, so forgive me.
So on the Atlantic side?
So on the Mediterranean side we started, Atlantic side we finished. And I think next year when they do it again, because he's skipping 2017, he needs a break, a big thing to organise, they're flipping it. And I think they're going to go back the other way. So it'll be Atlantic, Mediterranean. So we started Mediterranean. So anyway, I thought it was all over. It wasn't. 10:30 at night, I started again, and I just ran through the night, and I was so happy. I was literally skipping and singing. I was so happy to get that I was still going.
Wow.
So I went on and made the next checkpoint by about 6:30, just as first light, I made the next checkpoint. So sort of on we went from there. It did put me behind, though, having that 6 hours. And then, ironically, I came across a cow that was calving. And it was very clear to me well before I even got to her that she was in trouble because she was on her own. And when I got there, there was evidence that she'd been there for some time. So the guy, it was a French guy who was walking with me at that time. And he was great because I said, oh, you know, you go on, because the cutoff was coming up, like by that next morning. It was the cutoff for the first stage. And I wasn't going to leave this cow without trying to find some help for her, because that would totally defeat the purpose of why I was there. I was there to raise awareness to animals, so I'm not going to leave her. So, you know, but he was a darling, and he actually stayed with me. So we did that for a couple of hours, trying to get help for her. In the end, the fire brigade came. So
wow.
Apparently, yeah. So, but I took photos of her ear tags so they could find the owners. The fire brigade was going to come. These other hikers were waiting, and it all ended up all right. Long story short, got caught in a storm in the mountain, made a strategic decision in the end to not make the cutoff. We could have pushed right through the night till the early morning through the storm coming down. But I'd already been on my feet 17 hours that day, and obviously the other days had been like that. And it coming into making that first cutoff, it would have then put me right behind the 8 ball for the second stage, which was forecast was bad, and it's the hardest section was the second section. So the race director had said that those that didn't make the first cutoff did have the option free of charge to start the shorter race, the sister race, which is a 450k race called La Pastorelle. So because it was important for me to stay on course as long as possible, I decided to take that option. So I did the first 250Ks, and then I had 2 days break in Luchon, which is where the midpoint of the race was, and my favourite town, may I say. I could live there. And I based myself there and trained a lot, met some beautiful people, and started the race again, the shorter race. So I ended up doing 616 kilometres in a total of 11 and a half days, but I had 2 days break in the middle. So I can't claim it completely that it was non-stop. I had a little refresher, but it's still very difficult.
Wow.
And very difficult. and so many people didn't make even that first halfway point. Yeah. And, you know, the ironic part is at the end of that race, it was so brutal. I averaged 18 to 20 hours a day on my feet. And I didn't have one blister, not one blister.
What shoes were you wearing?
I was actually wearing Pearl Azumis. So I've been wearing Pearl Azumis for a few years. And it was just bizarre. Even I couldn't figure it. I wear Injinji toe socks as well. And I did a little bit of taping. But when I started venture racing when I was 45, I used to blister so easily. So I just, nailed it. But I did have a bit of a joke with some of the other people because they would look at my feet and they're just in, at the end, at the finish line, you know, they're in swathes of bandages and just hobbling and even at the halfway point, like people are crippled and they're just looking at my feet and looking at me is just like, what? And I just go like, vegan, like my feet, I'm vegan, you know, so, and they'd look at me and they'd realise I'm taking the piss, so, you know, that's an Aussie term. Yeah, so, I don't know, I was just really lucky in my shoes and the training I've done and the socks, it just all worked. So, super hard race, amazing experience, like, my God, what a place, like, incredible, but there was a lot of tears as well, like, times that
rough points, right, where you don't know, like you said, you don't know if you can continue, and it's just like the ups and downs.
Yeah, and, you know, the good thing is about doing hard things, like, when you do one hard thing, it leads into the next hard thing, and when you're going through that really rocky place, you know that I've been there before and I really hated this, but I got through it. And you know, no matter how much you're hurting or what's going on, chances are you're going to come out of it at some point. So just keep going. So even I thought my knee flared up really badly and I literally was doing, I don't know, maybe 1.5 kilometres an hour coming down a long descent. And I had no choice. I had to get to the village. And it was just agony. I was in tears. It was so painful. And, but, you know, that knee came good because I had to keep going on it. So eventually it took about 3 days for it to come completely right. But I realised once I got to the village, I actually went into the village to look for the bus, looked at the timetable, was going to finish, met a guy that was with his support crew from Portugal. And just sort of, they gave me some water and they were lovely. And he had the most terrible feet, like shocking feet. And I just thought, oh, you know, at least my feet are okay. And I just said to him, I said, are you going now? You know, not that we shared any language. I said, you know, are you going? He's like, yeah. I said, can I come with you? And he's like, well, yeah, we. So I just sort of tacked on behind him and thought, I'll just see how far I can go. It was just a bitumen road, you know, it was solid, flat surface up a hill. Just thought I'd see if it was awful, I'd turn around and come back because the bus wasn't coming for hours. And I kept going.
Wow.
Never came back. So, and then it just good.
Yeah.
Because Gwen, I don't know if you know, but Gwen is running his second attempt at 100 miler. It's actually 109 miles and it's in 2 days. So last year he had to quit. Well, last year he quit at mile 77 because of knee pain, but he's had a huge paradigm shift since then. And just hearing you know, he's like, I mean, you can say, but like, you're not going to, if you have pain, you're not going to quit. You're going to just walk. And
I'm just going to find a way. I mean, I think last year my goal was too much about, you know, competing, doing a time. And that really killed me because that's not what it's about. In a 100-mile distance, so much can happen. And I think this year I'm approaching it very differently and just trying to, I'm really looking forward to be in that moment where like you are like so low, everything hurts, like, because I want to be in that place. I want to practice being in that place.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, and what I think a lot of people, because people that don't run, especially don't run ultras or do like endurance hiking or fast packing or whatever, or adventure racing, they wonder what the hell, they think we're crazy. I mean, they think we're crazy because we're vegan anyway. I know that. you know, it's not about just running, is it? Like, you know, it just changes you fundamentally as a person, and it crosses over to all aspects of your life, is when things seem just like insurmountably hard, that, you know, that, oh, this is it, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's over or whatever. It's just not, you know, it's all up here. It's
I love this. There is this guy, David Goggins. He always say, like, he calls this like being a poopy pants. You know, when like yeah, you know, like things are not going how you want to, and you are being a poopy pants, and you know, like you complain and blah blah. But and like that's what I'm gonna remember. I'm gonna remember when I'm gonna be a poopy pants. I'm gonna say, like, don't be a poopy pants, and just like yes,
I'm gonna say it now too, Gwen. Thanks for that.
You know, yes, it hurts, and yes, it's slow, and yes, whatever. Like, just do like accept it, and it hurts. You don't have to deny it. You don't have to like hide it. You don't have to say that you are doing well. You are doing really bad, but that's okay. You know, that's the process, and I'm just like that's what I'm looking forward, because it's gonna help me like you said, like in every aspect of life. And it's not about running at that point. It's not about running. It's about finding like who you are, and improving as a person, and not being a pooping pants in running and in life.
In life, you know, just yeah. I mean, some people say, oh, you never give up, and I'm not someone that says never give up, because, you know, sometimes it's the smartest thing to do. You need to give up, and not recognizing that line will get you killed. My ex-boyfriend, the mountaineer, told me that, like, you know, the stubbornness will get you killed, and in the mountains it's so true. And in racing, sometimes you do recognize that. And sometimes it is very hard to recognize where you're going to cause long-term damage by keeping going. But I think if you bring it right back, so in my case, it's never been about, well, I shouldn't say never. When I first started adventure racing, I was quite competitive. But after my back injury, I had a paradigm shift, and it was about the doing, not about being better than someone else or winning or placing. It was very much about the journey. So the training is very important for me, going to a place, giving it my best shot. If I'd got to that village, you know, and I'd started to walk up that hill and things were still really bad, I would have come back, of course. Yeah. But I gave myself the opportunity to see if things would come better on a better surface, and it did. But I was ready to pull out if I needed to, same with the back. But I think something that Julie Pyatt said from Rich Roll's, you know, Rich Roll's wife, she said, hold on loosely. So you have a goal, and you're quite attached to that goal. You want to achieve that goal, but you're holding on to it loosely. So things can change, and you think, okay, you know, we'll let that go. Or maybe you have to sort of find something slightly different. With our running, if you've just got in that mindset, I need to do this time, you're setting yourself up for this like massive disappointment if things like you spit the dummy and pull out of the race. And you mean, truthfully, I think that you are the loser when you do that. If you just spit the dummy because you're not making the split that you wanted, like I'm not that numbers person, so maybe I'm looking at it a different way. But to me, I think the person that just like slows right down. Do you know David Goggins? You know, like
that's actually who. So you couldn't understand him because that's the poopy pants reference. One listens to David Goggins nonstop, and he plans on listening to his podcast on repeat during the 100-miler. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, David Goggins. I mean, he did some race, didn't he, where he just like slowed down incredibly and just like basically crawled in. So yeah, so he's the guy, Mr. Poopy Pants. Okay, I hadn't heard him talk about Poopy Pants, but now I have. So yeah, so anyway, so it's that, and to me, it's like the Pyrenees race. Like, I found it very interesting. I set out to do 866 kilometers. So I failed. I didn't do that. But at the end of the day, it meant shit. Like, that didn't matter. I actually got to cross the finish line. I ended up raising $6,500 for charities instead of $5,000. And I think because I stopped doing the smiley videos, like, oh, you know, here we go, guys, we're here now, and actually showed how bloody hard it was. And sometimes there was, you know, the ugly face and the tears and trying not to cry. And once I started sharing the reality of it, people were like, oh, hell, this is really hard. Like, you know, and it connected people. And it was a really valuable lesson to learn that, you know, why was I out there doing it? Sure, I love adventure and I love pushing myself. I like to sort of see what goes on. But I do these things because it's part of my advocacy for animals and veganism and the whole food plant-based thing. And you know what? I want people, especially people and women my age and, you know, sort of around this 40, 50, 60, 70, to sort of not keep defining themselves by this very narrow view that our society has of what middle age should look like, especially with women. You know, I started when I was 45, you know, and when I meet younger women that aren't running, they go, oh, there's hope for me yet. Joke, joke, you know, but hey, there is, you know, and it's not, you don't have to be a super athlete. I just have a crack. And if you don't finish, it really doesn't matter. The thing is that you started. It's the starting that matters, not the finishing. Like, just go as far as you can. Most people won't even start because it all seems too impossible. And they're scared of failing.
Yeah, and it's the same with anything, you know, and I think that's why it's almost a mistake for people, whatever you're doing, to commit to, even to just to like say that you're going to go vegan or that you're going to do this 100-miler, because it's not about that result. It's about trying. So if you take away that box and don't say that you're going to be doing that, but you just get out and do it, you get out and try, you get out and start, then you open up, you take down that barrier, and you probably will do it. But now there's not all that pressure, and it's about the journey. So I think that's really great advice.
Do you find, like, I mean, this is something like, if I do a race, I am never nervous. I don't get nervous because, like, it'll be what it'll be. I know I've done a reasonable amount of work, and because I'm not trying to, you know, bust through this time, I want to make a cutoff, but I never get nervous. Do you get nervous, like, or?
I haven't really gotten too nervous yet because I think I'm in the same space as you. I'm not so competitive yet. I'm just out to have fun and see. It's very new for me. I just started running a few years ago. So for me, I'm just out there to have fun and see what I'm capable of. So I'm not really nervous. I'm super excited every time.
It's so great. You know, and I see people and, you know, you see them like throwing up on the side of the trail and things, you know. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never actually had that, but certainly felt sick a number of times. But yeah, I think it's a great way to be, and I think the sustainability of that when you're in that mindset. I mean, this year I'm not racing. I did do a 100K thing up the high country, but it was more of a fast packing style as well, because I need to stay home. I mean, when I came home from France, you know, I had no money. I raised all the money for the charities, but I was quite broke. So I have to stay home this year and like earn some money. And plus my mum is very old and frail and sick, so I didn't want to go overseas. So next year, you know, we'll see. Cyril, who's the race director of Pyrenees, he's just come up with this new thing he calls the Legends 5 or something like that. So it's 5 of some of the gnarliest races around the world. And if you do all 5 in 3 years, you'll be like one of the legends. But, so he sent it to me, you know, and I'm just like, I don't think I could make like cut off for Tour de Jean or, you know, Spine and things like that. But, you know, it's like one in Alaska and like really hard races. But he said, you've already done one, you know, because La Pastorela. So, but yeah, I can't see it. And I couldn't afford all the airfares anyway. So,
totally. Well, yeah, you can just stay home and focus on your B&B and enjoy all of that. So we'll be excited to see how it's going. And
yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah, so where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
So the website, obviously, which is www.thebeetretreat.com.au. I'm on Instagram and Facebook on The Beet Retreat. And yeah, I think that's pretty well it. I do have a YouTube channel, but I've done nothing with it. and I'm very slack with my website too. But that's going to change. I've got to start blogging.
Oh, yeah.
I have so many adventures and things I want to talk about, but life is busy because I run everything myself. Everything is it's a one-woman show, so I do stretch myself a little bit thin. I've had to back off on the activism the last 2 months because I was just stretching too thin. So,
yeah, it takes a lot of time, and what you're doing, like you said, is activism in your own way, and it requires a lot less like stress. We were activists for like 5 years, and then we decided, I think very similar to you, that it's not really for us to give in that way, that energy. And so that's why we're doing our B&B and our nonprofit, to step back and focus on like things that are important to us, but in the same time, you are changing lives. And that's so cool. So we definitely encourage everyone to go, hopefully stay with us at our retreat, at our B&B, but like if you're in Australia, you've got to go check out the Bee Retreat. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you probably have to hit, we probably should let you go soon, right?
Yeah, I've got about 10 minutes until I have to do this other thing.
I know, you might need to eat the rest of your lentil bowl. We kind of caught you right in the middle of dinner.
My lentil bolognese is very cold, but I'll still eat it because I'm an ultra runner. I can eat anything. So it's like fine.
Oh, that's so great. So I guess what's next for you is staying home for the next year, and who knows, we'll be following you, and maybe you're going to be doing another race up next year or something, next summer.
Sure, there will be something because I'm looking on Facebook at the memories, and I've got sort of the itchy feet for something. So I mean, I'm running a bit, I'm hiking, I'm going to the gym, but you need a goal, you want something. So it's all fine, but I work for a race, like an adventure trail running adventure race mountain bike company. So I'm heading to the centre of Australia to my very favourite trail in August. They do a couple of races there. They do the running race is called Run Larapinta, and it's a 5-day stage race. And if any of your viewers from overseas want to come to Australia and do a run, I just think Run Larapinta is amazing, because Larapinta Trail is about 230k trail through the West Macdonald Ranges out of Alice Springs. So look up that on the old atlas. And I've done that trail solo in 11 days, and with my running friend, vegan running friend, we did it in 5 days last year. And it's just magnificent. It's quintessential ancient Australia. Like, you can feel the energy of that place. It's stunning. So if you get to Australia, do the Larapinta Trail. So so this company, Rapid Ascent, I do casual work for them and love them. I started adventure racing with them a number of years ago, and they've got a big mountain bike race just after Run Larapinta. So I'll be doing that. So I'll be living a little vicariously through the competitors, and I'll be doing some sweeping for the run, I hope. So that'll be my thing.
Great. Yeah, well, that sounds like something to put on our bucket list. I mean,
honestly do. And if you don't sort of tee it up to do the race, hike the trail. It's amazing, because you can hike it, like you can speed hike it for sure. But I can talk to you about that. And anyone that wants to ask me about that, just message me. I'll tell you all about Larapinta Trail.
Oh, that's awesome. Amazing.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, we have just people in chat room saying thank you. It's awesome. So thank you so much for being on the show. This was a lot of fun. We just love chatting and hearing about your stories and everything. So thank you so much for being on the show and for just being inspirational too. So keep doing what you're doing, and I guess we'll stay in touch.
You sure will. Thanks, Thanks. Bye.
And one last thing, make sure you guys tune in to our show next week. We have Lucy, how do you say her name? See, this is Solomon.
She's from Australia.
Yeah, Solomon runner. She just got 2nd place at the Mont Blanc Marathon 80K. She's an amazing ultra runner. From Australia. So we're gonna have her on next Wednesday or Tuesday. Next week. So stay tuned for that. That's gonna be a lot of fun as well.
I know Lucy quite well. She wants to come here. She's just a darling, because she's nearly vegan. Yeah, she's like 99% vegan, I think. So she's absolutely amazing.
Oh, it's gonna be cool. Okay, well, maybe one day we're gonna have to plan like some cool running camp at your retreat. So that would be amazing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, we will let you go. I have to pee really bad. So, all right, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.